I'm sorry, Chris, your hair is spectacular. I'm gonna have to include this in the video.
Welcome back, DPReview TV viewers. It is Chris Nichols here, and before we get into our review today, I just want to mention you guys are going to see a lot of movement, a lot of walk and talks today, and that's because Jordan and I are testing out the brand new DJI Ronin 4D. We really want to see how the gimbal performs before we do our final review on that camera. But hopefully you find today's review at least as interesting. We've got the brand new Tamron 28-75 2.8 VXD G2. Now, you got to remember that the original 28-75, we looked at this almost 3 years to the day, and it has become one of the best-selling lenses you will find on the market, and rightfully so. I mean, its flare characteristics, its bokeh, that left something to be desired, but it was compact, lightweight, and sharp. But now we have the second version of this lens, now with a faster focusing motor and new optical design. Let's see if it improves on some of the weaknesses of the original lens and just how it does overall. Does this count as a puddle? Now, one of the great things about the older Tamron 28-75 was that, again, it was an F2.8 zoom, but incredibly lightweight and compact. Amazingly, the new 28-75 VXD I'm playing with today shaves off 10 grams, or around 540 grams, just over a quarter of a noct. I mean, that's impressive. Yes, you can get lenses like the Sigma 28-70 even lighter, but honestly, I find this weight to be pretty perfect and ideal for just a walk-around lens. Now, it is still the same plastic construction as the older lens. You get the weather sealing, you do get the rubber seal around the mount, but it is still quite plastic. I do feel the manual focus ring is a little bit nicer to use on this one, though, a little bit more well dampened. Everything still feels solid and tight, very similar kind of hood. I do like that we still have that 67mm filter thread as well. It's great that Tamron keeps that consistent throughout their lineup. Now, this is a Tamron 28-70 VXD, their voice coil linear motor system, as opposed to the stepping motor that we had in our RXD version. Now, I never had a problem with the older autofocusing speed on the Tamron 28-75. It was fine because they're not moving a big chunk of glass, but the new VXD motor here is absolutely silent, very quick. I mean, from infinity to close and back, just punchy, 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 which is always nice to have in a lens. In fact, some geese flew overhead. I just flung the camera up straight away, took a shot, and I caught them and it was perfect. So, you know, if you're the kind of wildlife photographer or street photographer who's really interested in that kind of thing, well, you're going to like this lens. It's been a pretty cloudy day, but we've had a couple breaks of the sun here, and that's good because I wanted to test flare. This was an issue we had with the older Tamron 28-75. It had a bit of loss of contrast shooting into the sun, but it had a lot of reflections. I was hoping to see that improved. Now, on the new lens, although we have, again, very little contrast lost when we're shooting towards the sun, we still get those reflections. You can see them here in the bottom right corner. Rainbow patterns, pretty distracting. I hope to see that improve, but unfortunately it really hasn't. Okay. So, does it look like I'm hiding here? Because the answer is yes, I am, from the wind. It's brutal, my poor hair. All right, we have a bit of respite. Let's talk about bokeh here. The original 28-75 had really harsh soap bubble effect, and although it gave character, it was somewhat distracting, as you can see. And on the new G2 VXD 28-75, I'm happy to say, looking at this wide open, although you can still see a little bit of soap bubble effect, it is tame in comparison. Everything looks nice and smooth, far less distracting, and so for me, that's a big improvement here on the second version of this lens. All right, let's talk about focus breathing next. That's where when you manually focus a lens from close to infinity and back again, you'll notice the frame kind of zooms in and out, and this is a detriment if you're trying to do focus pulls in video, but I'm happy to say the new Tamron 28-75 does pretty well. Looking here at 28mm, you can see a little bit of movement on the side of the frame, but it's pretty minimal. You notice it a little bit more when you go to 75mm, but overall I'd say it's still a better than average result, and you could do focus pulls with this lens for video and not be disappointed. I will say though, setting up manual focus, we don't have a switch on the side of the lens, which is a shame because it's a minor inconvenience, even though we do have a customizable button here. All right, let's talk about Bokeh, longitudinal chromatic aberration, the color fringing that you get in the foreground and background autofocus areas, difficult to remove in post. So happily the Tamron 28-75 G2 actually handles Bokeh really nicely. You can see here very minimal colors, you know, slight magenta foreground, slight green background, but actually almost nothing. And that's really nice to see here because that's something, again, as I mentioned, is difficult to fix. Jordan and I are going to attempt to gracefully Fred Astaire down the stairs without falling while I talk about Sunstars, which are unfortunately the same as the first lens. And I say unfortunately because they're pretty average. I mean, nothing interesting here. Again, this isn't really a landscape lens, but if you want to stop down and get Sunstars, they're average. And we're back. We got most of our tests done our first day, so really I just wanted to look at sharpness, but I also wanted to compare it to the older Tamron 28-75. Let's take a look at that first here just really quickly. You can see here in the center, wide open at 2.8, it was already a pretty sharp lens. My real issue is when you would then look at the corners. I mean, wide open, they're pretty rough, and that was the main issue there. Now let's take a look at the brand new 28-75 2.8 version 2. So here you can see at 28mm at f2.8, very similar sharpness to the old lens, which is to say very good. Stopping down to 5.6, it just gets better. Same thing when we look at 75mm in the center, you can see here, and then stop down. Again, really nice sharpness. This is very much on par with the older lens. If anything, it's just slightly better. But the real improvement on the newer lens is the corners, because as you now look here, wide open in the corners at 28mm, it's better. It's definitely still going to benefit from stopping down, as you can see here, but already it's better sharpness. And then we look at the 75, it's the same story in the corners, wide open, or when we stop down. So the real improvement here, corner sharpness and just overall image quality is better on the new lens. So, you know, there's just a lot of improvements on the new Tamron 28-75 2.8. I like the fact that we've got a similar form factor and weight. I like that the focus is way faster. I like that the bokeh, although still somewhat busy, I think has a character which is more pleasing. And the sharpness in the corners is another big benefit. The only thing that hasn't improved, unfortunately, is the control of flare. You're still going to get distracting reflections and lots of ghosting. And although it's not going to always be a factor based on where you're pointing your lens and what the light is, when you do shoot towards the sun, it can be quite obnoxious, unfortunately. Still, if you consider the fact that the older Tamron was one of the best-selling lenses on the market, and the fact that this new lens is only $100 more, if you have the option to go either way, it's a no-brainer. Get the new Tamron 28-75. So if you've got Sony E-mount full-frame cameras and you're looking for a good general-purpose zoom that's got a 2.8 aperture, you got some great third-party options here. I mean, remember, we did also look at the Sigma 24-70 2.8 Art, and we did really like that lens. I would say, though, as long as you're okay with the heavier size and bulk and somewhat slower autofocus, the Sigma will give you beautiful bokeh and optical performance fantastic throughout the range. However, the new Tamron 28-75 also gives you good optical performance now, and I like the fact that it's fast focusing, compact, and even a little bit more affordable than the Sigma, as long as you're okay with that flare. Regardless, I think the Sony 24-70 G Master is just not in the running. You've got great third-party options here that'll do a great job for you. As always, we really appreciate you guys joining us for another video. And as usual, we do have a sample gallery for the brand new Tamron 28-75 2.8. Check that out. Links in the description below. You'll find that on dpreview.com. Also, if you've got some time and you haven't seen it yet, check out the Sigma 24-70 Art review as well. And then you'll have a good idea for both lenses, what they can do for you. Leave your comments below. And thank you for joining us. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you all soon.